Good evening, everybody. And oh, I think we've got some sort of echo. Is that? It's okay. Okay, right. Welcome to the committee. Just to announce, this is being live streamed. If you would like to film it, you can, but I'd appreciate if you could let me know in advance. No. We've got no changes to the running order and no updates. No, okay. Moving on to apologies. Councillor Foulweather can't attend and Councillor Goddard is substituting for him. Do we have any other apologies? No. And any declarations of interest? Sir Goddard.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. And with apologies, members of the committee will probably be aware that I was involved with the call-in of the substantive item before committee today. I've received advice from officers that, as a result, it is not recommended that I take part in the discussion of that particular item. I believe on the grounds of the way in which the call-in was worded. I am minded to follow officers' advice in this as in all things, and therefore will withdraw with apologies from committee at the time when that item is discussed, i.e. in a minute.
Thank you very much. Any other declarations of interest? Don't see any. Can we then move on to the minutes, casting our minds back rather a long way, because our last meeting was in May. Bear with me and the minutes of 20th of May, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, and page 13. Don't see any comments or amendments, so I'm happy to, if with your permission, I will sign those minutes as correct record. Thank you. We now move on to the substantive item on the agenda, which is item 70. Yes. Thanks. Yep, it's fine. Thank you. Someone arriving? I'm not sure. No, it doesn't. Okay. Item 4, which is the application for 17 Hardboard Road, and I'm now going to hand over to Chloe Jacobs to present the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, councillors. So this is a householder application that's been called into committee by councillors. The application seeks planning permission for a single-storey rear extensions, alterations to the roof, and a number of other alterations to help improve the thermal efficiency of the building and meet the council's net zero carbon ambitions. Since the application first came in, officers have worked hard to address neighbour and councillor concerns and have sought amended plans, which include changes to the proposed roof materials from cladding to traditional tiles, reduction in the number of solar panels to the front elevation, a reduction in the length of the single-storey rear extension, and simplification of the rear elevation to be finished in render instead of metal, removal of the canopy over the windows, simplification to the design of the windows and the doors and fenestration, and removal of the external thermal blinds, which were previously proposed as part of the original application. So the application site relates to a large detached house located in Cutslow to the north of the city, outlined here on the site plan in red. The existing property is a 2-storey dwelling house with a hipped roof, finished in pebble dash render under a tiled roof. These are the existing floor plans. These are the existing elevations, and then turning to the proposed elevations. So the proposal seeks a number of alterations to improve the thermal efficiency of the building, and the applicant has utilised passive house principles and taken a fabric first approach to achieving this. In line with passive house principles, the amount of glazing on the south elevation has been reduced, and this has resulted in the loss of the bay window to the front. This will be replaced with a smaller opening, which is, I don't know if you can see where point D is. It's just the window on the right-hand side. A number of objections have been received in regards to the loss of this bay window. It is noted that there are a number of properties along Cardboard Road that feature bay windows. However, officers acknowledge that the property is not listed, nor is it in a conservation area. Furthermore, the proposal seeks to finish the property in external insulating render, which if the bay window was to be retained and the render applied, given the depth of the render, the bay window would lose its definition. And therefore, in light of the benefit of improving the thermal efficiency of the building, it's considered that the removal of the bay window is acceptable in this case. A number of properties are finished in varying shades of white and coloured render. So the installation of the external render in this case, again, is considered acceptable in design terms. Changes to the windows, these are sought to be replaced with triple glazing in order to improve the thermal efficiency of the building. Again, these are considered to be acceptable in principle. One of the main changes to the property is that the roof will be changed from a hipped roof form to a pitch roof form. The height of the roof will remain as existing and it would not increase with the proposed alteration. There are a number of properties along the street scene which feature pitched roof forms, including the neighbouring property, and therefore the hip to gable alteration is considered acceptable in design terms. The roof would now be finished in tiles, giving it a more traditional appearance, which would be in keeping with the character of the existing property and neighbouring properties along Cardboard Road. Again, with the solar panels and the roof lights within that roof space, they're considered acceptable in design terms. To the rear, the proposal includes a large dormer window. Whilst officers acknowledge that it is a large dormer window, the dormer would sit comfortably within the roof space and would read as an appropriate addition. The dormer would be finished in zinc cladding, which would be a more contemporary material finish. However, it is considered that given the colour of this zinc cladding, which will be close to the colour of the roof tiles that are proposed, and its location at the rear of the property, that the proposed dormer would not detract from the visual amenity of the street scene and would therefore be acceptable in design terms. It's also considered that the proposed dormer would not give rise to any adverse impacts in regards to amenity. Whilst the dormer does feature rear-facing windows, which will face out towards the rear gardens, these windows are not considered to result in any significant levels of overlooking or loss of privacy over above the existing situation on site where we have first floor rear-facing windows. Also to the rear, we have a proposed single-storey rear extension, which will span the full width of the property and would extend 6.3 metres to the rear. The extension would have a flat roof with an overall height of approximately 3.7 metres. Neighbour concerns have been raised in regards to the size and scale of the proposed extension, and whilst large, officers are of the opinion that the proposed extension would read as a clear secondary and subservient addition to the main dwelling. There are examples of larger rear extensions along Cardboard Road and the neighbouring roads, and therefore it's not considered to be out of keeping with the character and appearance of the host dwelling or the wider context of the site. The extension would be finished in render to match the materials of the host dwelling and therefore would form a good visual relationship to the existing property. Given the rear garden, it's considered that there would be more than sufficient amount of private outdoor amenity space to serve future occupiers. So the application would be in accordance with policy H16. In terms of the impact on neighbouring amenity, the 45-25 degree guidelines as outlined in policy H14 have been applied to the nearest habitable room windows of both neighbouring properties, and it would not, the proposed extension would not contravene the 45-25 degree when taken from both of these openings. So therefore it's not considered that the proposed extension would give rise to any loss of light and or outlook to either neighbour. The proposed extension would be set away from both boundaries and so is not considered to be significantly overbearing or result in any tunnelling or enclosure impacts to either neighbour. It is noted that one window is proposed within the western side elevation of the single-storey rear extension, which would face towards number 15. However, given the existing boundary treatment on site, which comprises a 1.8 metre high fence, it's not considered that this window would give rise to any overlooking or loss of privacy given the existing boundary treatments. Remaining windows would be located to the rear and face out onto the applicant garden, and it's not considered that these would give rise to any impacts in terms of overlooking or loss of privacy, and therefore it's considered acceptable in amenity terms. Concerns were also raised in regards to the impact of the proposed development in terms of surface level flooding in the locality. The extension would primarily sit on an area of existing hard standing with a relatively small area of the extension sitting on grass. The development would obviously increase the impermeable area on the site and therefore could lead to increased surface water runoff, but subject to condition for the development to be drained by SUDS. We feel that that would be acceptable. A number of bat surveys have also been carried out on the site, which has confirmed that there's no bats being observed emerging from the building, but bats have been observed actively foraging within the vicinity. And the reports have concluded that a bat licence will be needed from Natural England in order for the development to be carried out. Officers under our duty have had to consider the likelihood of a licence being granted, which, as outlined in the committee report, we have concluded that it's unlikely that a licence would not be granted for the proposed development. So yeah, in light of all of that, the application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions listed at the end of the committee report. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, we don't have any speakers against the application, but we have got one speaking for the application, and that's Mr. Jackson. If you could come forward. Thank you. You've got up to 5 minutes to make a
Sorry,
case.
I've got a quick statement just because I get studying.
That's fine.
Too nervous. And
That's
I think
fine.
probably a lot of what I'm going to say means it.
Okay.
It was just really, I was just.
If you could press the button, I'll turn mine off.
Is that okay? Yep. Okay. Perfect. So my name's Oliver Jackson. My wife and I bought the property at the start of last year. We've been looking for quite some time to move into Oxford. We've been living out towards Whitney Way, but both our children and our work is in Oxford, so we wanted to reduce the commute and make life a bit easier for ourselves. So we bought number 17 Harble Road. The intent was to refurbish the existing property, to bring it in line with Passive House standards. And the plan was to put a simple rear extension on the property. When we did the initial structural surveys, the roof needs replacing. So when we realised that the roof needed replacing, it made sense to us, if we were spending quite a bit of money, that we would also try and make that habitable space, because we've got 2 teenage daughters, and so spaces as a premium. We looked at, I personally am quite interested in Passive House, so we looked to improve the thermal efficiency of the building, try and super insulate it. It's a single brick facade, so it's very poorly insulated as it stands at the moment. So that was why we needed to reduce any unnecessary overhangs, so the removal of the bay window, reduce the impact of solar gain, and then obviously put an external insulated render on the exterior of the building. That one's fine. Yeah, we kind of looked at the existing buildings on Harble Road, and there are some quite large buildings on Harble Road, or were similar size to this, and been demolished and then large buildings built. So we kind of felt like this was a not too contentious extension. We did meet with both our neighbours before we put the application in to have discussions, and they had highlighted that they didn't like the roof material and the size of the rear extension. And as the planning officers mentioned, that was something that we've changed within the submission, so that it's one, more in keeping with local neighbours, but also we've tried to reduce the depth of the extension as much as possible. Because it is Passive House, there is obviously a requirement of 300mm insulation in the roof. And then if you're having a green roof, which we were looking to do partly from an outlook from the building, but also partly to deal with the SUDS issue, there's obviously a green roof build-up. So although it sounds quite high, it's actually similar height to the existing ceilings within the building. It's got a deep insulation and green roof effectively. we're looking at keeping all of the trees at the rear of the property. I think some people are concerned about that, and we're not looking at removing any more of those. We will probably look at putting more plants in, and we've put a SUDS plan in place, or addition to that through the part of the planning that includes a rain garden. Not something I was aware of before. Now I am quite keen on it. So we're going to have a rain garden at the back of the house, hopefully, if this is approved, that will actually provide quite a significant betterment, hopefully, to the property. I think that's really it. It's for us, it's just been a bit like everything. It's quite stressful. We're quite keen to hopefully get this started, because it's been quite expensive living in a rental, because the house has been out of use now for 4 years before we lived in, before we took it over, because the previous owner moved to Portugal and then unfortunately died during COVID, or just after COVID. So it went through probate. So it has been emptied for 4 years, coming up to 5 years. So we are keen to try and make it a habitable space so that we can move into that area. My eldest daughter's just about to start a GCSE. So again, it's something where we're just mindful of trying to get this process as quickly as possible. That's all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. If you go and sit back down, the people may have specific questions, which if the planning officers can't answer them, we may ask you. Thank you. Okay, questions. I can see Councillor Upton, Councillor Henwood, Councillor Hollingsworth. Please, yeah.
Thank you. A couple of clarifications. Remind me what a Juliet balcony is, because I see that you've mentioned in 1013 that the PD, that there is a Juliet balcony, but the PD rights for a balcony are being removed in condition 4. So I presume that that's just talking about not making the single story extension have a balcony on. Just clarify that. Second thing about the metal cladding, you do say that the amended plans removed it, but it is still mentioned in paragraph 1013 for the box dormer. So can you just clarify, is it removed or not? And something was just triggered by what you said about your earlier your discussions with the applicant. You removed some of the solar panels. I'm just wondering why? Why do we need to move some? Because I can't see that having a couple more on there would have made much difference. Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of the balcony, we've removed permit development rights for the extension to be used as a terraced balcony area, so that to reduce any kind of overlooking or noise disturbance to either neighbour, because obviously it is quite tall, and obviously we just don't want direct overlooking from that.
Just that doesn't affect the fact that there's a Juliet balcony.
No. The original proposal when it first came in was seeking to use zinc cladding on the whole of the roof. It was removing all the tiles and having a proper cladded roof and flat box dormer. We've now got the main roof will be tiled, and it's just the box dormer that will be finished in cladding. And then solar panels. I can't remember. It was quite a while ago that we did the amended plans. The exact reason why the solar panels were removed, I think it was because there was quite a few objections into kind of the overall kind of fussiness of that front design. I think that came out in some of the neighbour consultation comments. So I think it was to try and mitigate that.
Okay.
Mr. Jackson, can you throw any light on the removal of the solar panels? Okay. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Henwood.
Thank you, Chair. What were the material reasons for the call-in?
While the planning officers just check that, are you happy for me to move on to Councillor Hollingsworth and then come back to you? Okay.
Yeah, it might relate. I have a couple of questions to the officers, just seeking clarity. It's not a conservation area, no specific controls here. So I just want to make sure when you say we are looking at a revised design, what you mean, so this is question 1, is that as officers, the applicant, for reasons which are entirely down to the applicant and their consultation with the neighbours, made a slightly revised form around the solar panels and such like. And so as a planning authority, we just have to consider that. It's obviously not our role to redesign it and tell them to take a different line with their, that was the first question. And the second one was the timescale, looking at the dates of when the original advertisements went up. We're right at the beginning of 2025. We're quite a long way through. Is that just the BATS issue, which I am aware is quite often a reason for delays, the having to get new BAT information, or is there other planning factors which have meant that the decision isn't now, or is it just the BATs or something else?
Yes, so the application was revised through goodwill of the applicant to try and address the neighbour concerns and the concerns raised by councillors as part of the call-in. So yeah, we worked with the applicant to try and address those comments that were made. In terms of timescales, yeah, the delay has been BATS and BATS only.
Okay, Rob, do you want to come back on the reasons for the call-in?
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at the original call-in email, which was obviously then a number of members which agreed with that call-in. The first concern was that the proposed development is bulky in comparison to and overlooks neighbouring properties. The second reason was the development does not accord with the Wolvercote Neighbourhood Plan, page 9, paragraph 6, which states that it is important to attend to the scale of buildings and the density of development to ensure that any new building is appropriate in design, scale and character to its immediate neighbours, specifically the metal roof, the removal of the tiled roof over the front door and the installation of window shutters are out of character with the neighbourhood. And lastly, the footprint of the proposed development risks worsening serious groundwater and potential flooding problems, which affect neighbouring properties. I should just be clear that these concerns were made with respect to the originally submitted application, and that is a different set of plans to the plans that are in front of you today, which take into account these are the amended plans, which Chloe has just been referring to. Thank you.
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Alex. Just a quick one on that neighbourhood plan. It talks about, appropriate design, scale and character to its immediate neighbours. And then you've also just mentioned neighbourhood. When you look at the other houses, so for example, 18 and 28 are very big, but they're not actually the immediate neighbours, but they are very close by. So what does immediate neighbours mean? Does it literally only mean houses, 15 and 17, or does it mean the general houses in the area? From the local plan, you may not be able to clarify that. I'm just looking at the statement and I can't work it out from what was just said.
So when assessing application, we will look at the immediate context in terms of the site itself and the immediate neighbours either side. But we do also take a wider view of the street scene. So we will look at what's on that side of the Harwood Road, what's on the opposite side. So it's a bit of both. Yeah, sorry.
That's good.
You said that one of the reasons for the initial call-in was that it was believed not to be in accordance with the Wolvercote Neighbourhood Plan. Do you believe that the changes that have been made since the application first came in now mean that it is in accordance with that?
Yes.
In what way?
Yes, we do believe that it is in accordance with the neighbourhood plan. The neighbourhood plan is a bit kind of ambiguous because when you read it, it refers to new buildings and it reads more as a sense of like new development for new dwellings rather than because this is an extension to an existing building. It's not a new building. But even regardless of that, obviously we have policy DH1, which obviously seeks for high quality design. So we haven't necessarily applied that policy of the Wolvercote Neighbourhood Plan in this case, but obviously the same kind of principles are echoed in DH1, which in this case we do believe it is in accordance with policy DH1. I think there was also mention to the Wolvercott neighbourhood plan policy, which relates to the flooding, which, as outlined in my report, we do think it accords with that policy.
Thank you, Chloe. Other questions? No, in which case we move on to discussion. Okay, so the main issues seem to be the design and how much it is in keeping with the area. Okay, Alex.
Yeah, it's obviously the plan has evolved. We don't have officer comment on the initial plan. We have the call-in, which is slightly different. The call-in view is a possibility of a non-compliance with the neighbourhood plan. We never actually got an officer opportunity to decide whether or not it complied in its original format. It certainly does comply now. In reading the plan and looking at the range of objections, this came over to me and been reinforced, I think, by hearing the discussion, the answers to the questions asked, that quite a lot of the objections were treating this as a property which is within a conservation area and with specific rules around that conservation, that heritage asset which needs to be protected, when in fact it is not. It's an ordinary house in an ordinary road in a planning sense. And so what we have is a design which is slightly different to some other designs, but that's simply, I would say, modern, but it's not really modern, is it? The passive house concept is several decades old, and taking that design approach is what you would expect something to look like, would be something like this, taking those principles on board. Some of the issues raised around the size of the rear extension, it's 1.3 metre or something in that order, slightly larger than other ones in the road. Looking at the site of the plots of land, that's neither here nor there, frankly, in this sense. Some of the issues around flooding, it's interesting to see those raised. It was quite interesting to look from the sort of aerial view of the entire road, where most properties there have what looks suspiciously like concrete across the front of it, and is not terribly aware of flood prevention. This particular proposal will have a condition, if it's given permission, to address it in a way which is more creative and more thoughtful than what appears, maybe wrong, to some of the other properties in the area. So on that basis, I cannot see any reason at all to not approve this. Just to be clear, of course, the principles laid down in the 1947 Act, the 1990 Act and all the rest of it is that we should grant permission unless there is a reason not to. And I cannot see any reason not to. I actually think it's a rather positive piece of design addressing an issue in an imaginative way and making good use of a site, and I think setting a new standard which maybe other properties nearby will in due course meet. So on that basis, I would like to move approval with the conditions as set out in the report.
People hovering. Oh, right. Okay, Councillor Upton, did you want to second it as well, or did you want to make other comments?
I will second it, but I was just going to add the comment that this is just the kind of thing we'd like to see. Well, it's a refreshing change that this was not a proposal to completely knock this down and rebuild something from scratch, that they are actually reusing the material there. They are reducing the embedded carbon, I think is the phrase, for which you would have if you built a new house from scratch. So it's really good to see a retrofit of an existing building. I had no idea that it had been, and it's neither here nor there, that it's been empty for a number of years, but of course it is really good to see a building coming back into use. So anyway, yes, I'd like to second it.
Councillor Elton.
Just a very minor point, but I do think it's actually a bit of a genuine shame that 5 solar panels have been lost from the front of this, when there are other examples further down the street when there's quite a lot of solar panels on the front. But that is not a decision we can make today, but I just thought I'd say that.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo that and say that if you look at the aerial view, there are many larger properties with much less drainage, particularly one opposite. And, you know, to think that it doesn't accord with other neighbouring properties, as Alex has really compellingly said, you know, strikes me as a stretch. So yes, I would support the seconding and everything that everyone else has said. So, yeah.
Don't see any, I think we're generally moving towards a consensus on this. I don't see anybody wanting to speak against it, in which case we've got proposal to support the officer's recommendation and several seconders. So Councillor Kerr, it doesn't really matter. I think just for the records, we need to have a seconder. Yeah, fine. Okay, so can we vote on the proposal to support the officer's recommendation in favour of this application? Can I see all those in favour? I think that is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chloe. And I think all that remains me to do is to draw your attention to forthcoming applications, which were rather a lot, and the dates of the future meetings. Please note that the next meeting is actually on the 7th of October, so slightly earlier in the month. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.